Hopefully, this will be a stimulating presentation that gets you to connect many of the themes that you've heard this morning from the other presenters. Full disclaimer, I have no exciting video with no sound effects in the background. It's just going to be me and a few slides, but hopefully we can have a good conversation. And the title of my presentation is really Data Centricity as a Mindset and Transforming How We Work. So the first thing that I want to speak to is this opportunity that's driving this urgency to adopt a data-centric mindset. So Bernard, in his presentation this morning, talked about biology, and we believe that we are in the century of biology, but there's much that we don't understand. But we are undeniably at this intersection point of biology and technology. And in each of these sectors, there's an amazing pace and proliferation of innovation. And in technology, I'm including things like AI and machine learning. So what this has done is really to sharpen our focus on the enormous potential for data if and only if it is treated as a high-value asset, to unlock innovation, to fundamentally release human capacity potential and new sources of value, and to fuel competitive differentiation. So there's a lot encompassed within that statement, and I think what we should do first is we should really align on what do we mean by data centricity, and what is the disruptive potential of that mindset. So first, data centricity is fundamentally changing how we think about the generation and the consumption of data, not at its first point of use, but across its entire life cycle. And the definition and concept of life cycle has changed, because what we've seen in the presentations this morning is the enormous power for continuous learning and reuse of data in new ways. It's also stimulating a complete reimagination of our end-to-end business processes across a connected data ecosystem. Many of the business processes that we operate today have grown up organically from functional mindsets, where there wasn't that potential for interoperability and to really think about that streamlined flow when the real world and the virtual world can intersect. It's also refocusing our approach to digital investments and how we think about those investments as both transforming the architecture and digital ecosystem that we have, but also focusing us on really building and using data products, and within those data products, leveraging common data models and standards across the application landscape. It's shaping how we think about data science capabilities and the potential to unlock that value and drive innovation. Not data science as something that we need to rush and do because it's hot and it's exciting, but are we purposefully thinking about the business outcomes that we want to drive in the near term, the midterm, and the long term? And then, as importantly, building that foundational culture of data literacy and the important aspect of upskilling our workforce. We heard this morning about the role that Dassault is playing in educating the future workforce, but we have a workforce that we need to bring with us on this journey, and we need to invest in upskilling them. And then lastly, but definitely not least, to talk to you a little bit about this partnership opportunity externally with peers, with commercial solution providers, and in pre-competitive consortia. So first is to think big, end-to-end across the value chain. And what you see in this slide here, and it's less about reading all of the language on the slide, and it's more about the fact that this is the end-to-end value chain for the product life cycle. And what you will notice is there's no mention of supply chain, there's no mention of manufacturing or quality or engineering or process development. All extremely important groupings of expertise and skill sets. But what you see here on the upper part of this diagram is all of the data that is generated, updated, used, and exchanged across that life cycle, across a variety of customers, whether it's from one scientific colleague to another, whether it is from Amgen to regulatory authorities, whether it's to suppliers, whether it's to contract manufacturers. It is the business process outcomes end to end that you see on the bottom. And on the top, you see the data life cycle for product. This way of thinking about that convergence of our data life cycle and our product life cycle fundamentally changes how we think about our business processes and how we think about the data centricity mindset we need across that ecosystem to achieve this transformation. So first, I talked about refocusing our investment to build and use data products. So what does this mean? Every company spends millions, hundreds of millions of dollars a year in basically upgrading locally transactional systems, very powerful transactional systems. We heard this morning about ERP. We also heard about the product lifecycle management platform, right, from Dassault. When these transactional layer systems, which are incredibly powerful, are upgraded, are we thinking about their role in that convergent data lifecycle and product lifecycle, and how we can think about the implementation and investments in those platforms as opportunities to move us closer to this data-centric future? Additionally, we have an empowerment of the business with data science, but we have a behavior with suppliers where we continually locally engineer our data, and then we re-engineer it for the next customer. And that is digital waste, and that is an investment waste. Whereas if we move to a data product mindset, then basically what we now have is data products that are available for a variety of customer applications, whether that is a reporting tool, whether that is basically a design tool, a simulation tool, whether it is an augmented decision tool or an autonomous decision tool across that ecosystem, or whether it is to enable the data scientists to do discovery, to find new patterns in data, to drive that innovation and intellectual property generation. But what is striking about this changed approach is in the sort of tombstone on the bottom, is that the systems that we have today are complex, inefficient, they're not sustainable, and it's a very high total cost of ownership. But often that is hidden from the executives making the investment decisions. And so we keep making and reproducing that behavior. So we focus on recreating the left-hand side many, many times. However, shifting to a data-centric mindset and focusing on data products, we have simpler, efficient, reusable, sustainable data ecosystem and platforms that basically have a much lower total cost of ownership. What does that translate to that matters to the business? 90% increase in speed of delivery of new business case-driven capabilities, significantly lower data governance overhead, and we can easily integrate industry standards. So to make the example specific, and to talk about Product 360, and to use it to illustrate what it means in terms of the implementation of ontologies, and the generation view and the consumer view of data. So when we look at Product 360 on the left-hand side, what you see first is basically the consumer view of Product 360. So it's a trusted source of data for product information. And as a consumer, you can look at that product from a 360-degree perspective. So you can ask, what is the product? What is the product made of? What are the product properties? How is the product made? Instantaneously at your fingertips, you can answer those questions. On the right-hand side, what you see is you see a data-centric approach to product data lifecycle. And this produces a federated product record that is comprised of data elements connected seamlessly across a data fabric. What you see around the center is you see the relationships between the data elements that need to be built, managed, maintained, and persisted in a durable way that give you all of the insight into that product. And those relationships will grow over time as you understand more and more how your product is connected as you integrate the product journey with the patient journey. Also implicit within this, you will see as all these functions come together focused on the data in the center, it's implicit that what we do is we change how we work with our data. So data product principles are basically that the data in the product is of high quality, the data is reusable, aligned with FAIR, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And that data comes with provenance. So every time that data makes a transition step across that product lifecycle in the value chain I showed earlier, then that lineage is coming with the data. So you can trust it, you know its origin, and you understand its context and its usability. It comes with a change in behavior in terms of our data governance and how we think about making sure that we have accountability across our data owner network, and that as we do that, we're integrating data standards and we're integrating standard definitions of terminologies and concepts across the entirety of that life cycle. And then importantly, we go from a master data management business process where we think about centralization of that to one that is federated, but basically has a common set of rules around data ownership and data stewardship. So with that data mindset now coming down to the lab, how does this shape the deployment of our data science capabilities? So what you see on the left-hand side, at the far left, is the original way that we do cell line development. And cell line development is basically from vector to final cell bank. That is the cell factory for biologics. And if you look at the left-hand side, what you see is a process that is limited by the incompatibility of data from different sources and the challenge of managing that variety and velocity difference. And you basically see single attribute ranking, and you see a step process from equipment to analysis to insight, and then it goes and is left behind, and it's not reused. As you move to the right-hand side, what you see is with a data-centric thinking and the urgency of changing the ability of our business processes to support the speed at which we need to operate, our molecules are more complex and our attributes are more complex. So what we need to do is we need to move to the right-hand side, where our design space is not limited by our ability to aggregate data, to analyze data, to get insights from that data, and to apply AI and machine learning to basically get insights from our single image processing, where we can now collect thousands of images, we can get quantitative phenotypic data on cell size and cell shape, and every experiment done, every cell line development experiment done, we are getting institutionally smarter because of that knowledge capture. If we go to the next slide, then on the next slide, I talked earlier about the importance of building digital culture and bringing the staff with you. And it's important to understand that there's not one way that you do that. You have to do that in multiple ways. And so we've chosen to do it and illustrate it here in ways that make a difference to the people who have to work with data on a daily basis and people who want to learn how, with data-centric thinking, they can change their way of working, both individually but collectively as teams. So on the left-hand side, what you see is analytics platform evaluation. So that is inviting the business users who are not yet experts in applying digital tools and analytics and inviting them into the data science lab to collaborate together, looking and deploying things with the agile methodology of ways in which we can meet that spectrum of needs from novice to expert, but meaningfully deploy analytical solutions and data tools that fundamentally change and improve their day of working so that they no longer have to spend time chasing data, they can spend their time using data, and they can get new insights from that data that drive a transformation of how their business process works and how they work with their colleagues. We've heard a lot that the way in which people interact with data is important. And so one of the things that we've been looking at, and there's a lot of excitement now in the potential of ChatGPT and how that can be deployed, basically allowing people to interact through their voice and find information quickly and easily. Additionally, something that we do, which is critical for us as an industry, is basically we file with regulatory authorities, we get questions and we get answers to those questions back to the regulators to get our products approved, to get them in the hands of patients. As we do that, what we've realized is that by investing in AI, machine learning, and semantic searching, we can take that body of knowledge that is in all the documents that today we have used to provide those responses to regulators globally, across multiple molecules, multiple products, multiple variations, multiple presentations, and we can now have augmented response to regulator questions through this platform. And when this platform provides an answer which someone thinks isn't right, then there's a way to provide feedback in the platform, so now the platform is acquiring that extra human knowledge, and again is becoming more sophisticated. That process of taking AI and machine learning and semantic searching and applying it to our document-centric environment has given us insight into what we need to do in our data-centric environment and how to think about those investments and then how to partner with regulators. And then lastly, down on the machine and manufacturing floor, we recognize that capacity lost in manufacturing is time and money, and it's critical. And so we're looking at ways in which we can apply IoT sensors to pick up signals in our manufacturing equipment, and something as simple as a servo motor. So signals that are not typically seen, to develop models against those signals, to be able to predict failure, to allow our end users to register their equipment on the manufacturing line, to collaborate in a hybrid way to develop new models, and then to put those into production so that in fact you can avoid manufacturing downtime, which has enormous value. So what I'm hoping you see here is by engaging the community and picking different types of application, we're bringing them with us on that data-centric journey. So then what this translates to is this translates to an opportunity and a point in time. Much of what I've described is common to many of the presentations that you heard this morning. This desire to move away from siloed data, to create more connectivity and interactivity of that data in the overall end-to-end process. So one of the ways in which we can collaborate is to collaborate working with pre-competitive consortia. We can also collaborate with each other, and one of the things that I've noticed is there is a data-centric mindset that is shared in this room. And I think there's a lot of potential to collaborate more, to co-develop data standards, and those data standards then allow us the opportunity to have that interoperability of data models across industries, across business processes, and really to now start to get data product APIs that will drive that data-centric ecosystem. And so now we move to data centricity, which then focuses to customer centricity and this focus on end-to-end value. One of the ways that we think about that at Amgen is we think about our data in a very interrelatable way, here in this hexagon on the right-hand side. And at the center, you see provider, you see product, and you see patient. What's implicit within this is product 360, process 360, plant 360, and customer 360. Those as data products are the basis of what you heard about this morning as digital twins. And when you connect them end-to-end across your business processes, you have a digital twin of your business process. So this sounds great. How far are we from reality? So this morning, Bernard talked about the infinite loop. And I would like to propose that we have a first working infinite loop here as we integrate the product and the patient journeys. So what we were able to do is we were able to take an enormous range and variety of data across that product lifecycle and that patient journey. We were able to integrate the data systems underneath in a data-centric way that meant that now at your fingertips, we can see distribution of product complaints. We can see it across product. We can see it across, at the bottom left-hand panel, we can see it across product. We can see it across presentation. We can see it across manufacturing site. We can see it across region. We can see it across healthcare provider. We can then double-click and we can ask the question, for any particular product in its BOM, what is the relationship of that product to the other raw materials? You can then instantly pivot and say in the top right-hand corner, but if we take one raw material that maybe is leading to product complaints, how many times does that raw material appear across the footprint of all the products that we've ever made? That level of access to data instantaneously is a complexity that we cannot manage as humans. And then basically we can say, okay, now we want to relate it to geography. We want to understand what's happening with the healthcare providers that are working with the patients. And then we want to apply AI and machine learning and sentiment analysis to the patient call lines so that we can, again, create now this infinite loop that feeds back from product to patient to product redesign and redesign of the patient experience. So our ambition with data centricity at its core is basically enabling that workforce of the future, but operating at that speed of tomorrow. Recognizing as we go from right to left, up on the right-hand side, that we go from people to working together, to people and machines working together, to people, machines, AI, creating new opportunities, new innovation, and new value. How do we want to do this? We want to do this across the entire ecosystem, from design to lab to tech transfer, manufacturing and control. We heard about CQV this morning, digital supply chain, digital regulatory filing. Why would there be a limit in the flow of that data? And what's really important is that you will see that this data exists independent of any singular application. And is a platform of business processes that are generating it, end-to-end, that is now powering that range of information stakeholders, transforming the way that we work, unlocking that value and innovation. When you look at the vision and you think of a healthcare and life sciences ecosystem powered through data centricity, what you see is that we're on the cusp of the potential for data usage and its applications to transform in the way it has transformed our consumer lives, to transform global healthcare outcomes. And with that, thank you for your attention.